You're an independently published author and you have just finished your book. And so the only reasonable thing for you to do is Google how much is editing supposed to cost? This seems like a very straightforward question. But if you're here, you probably did Google that question. And boy, did the range of answers you get only add to your confusion. Just as a warning, I'm going to get a little bit spicy in this video because I am heated after the nonsensical exchange I had on Twitter about editing prices, which is ridiculous. Why are we arguing about this? The reason I get so heated is because we have two major problems going up against independently published authors. The first is they are subject to all of the overcharging scam artists who exist solely to steal their money and as much of it as possible. And on the other end, you have well-meaning, talented, and possibly just starting out editing services providers who are afraid to charge a correct rate for their time, their energy, and their skill. That leaves you, the independently published author, looking at these sky-high prices that you cannot pay and frankly shouldn't pay because you're a first-time author. And then instead with these bargain basement prices and you're wondering, is this person even skilled? Should I trust them with my work? And there's really no way for you as a beginner to answer that question. So I thought I'd come along and help you out. Let's get started. Hello, Shameless Writers. I am Kristen McTiernan, the nonsense-free editor here for your regular dose of writing wisdom. My channel is designed to help independently published authors of all genres tell and sell their stories. And part of that, regardless of what you're writing, is editing, which, I'm sorry to say, costs money. But how much money? That is the question, and apparently it is quite controversial. So over on my Substack, I wrote a long blog post about editing and how sometimes it can serve as a gatekeeper, which isn't really fair because the whole reason independently published authors became independently published is because they didn't want to deal with the gatekeepers. But if you're asking for thousands and thousands of dollars up front so you can publish a book which may or may not make that amount of money, that's kind of a gatekeeping thing. And so I wrote the article talking about different ways that you can find to pay for editing and the best ways to do that. And as a good content creator, I threw that article out on Twitter, where I follow and am followed by writers and all different types of people. Now let's carefully look at this tweet. Okay, I'm not going to get mad at people for not clicking on the article because the whole function of Twitter is to stay on the platform. I'm not mad that you didn't read the article. But let me ask you, is there anything at all in this tweet that says you should skip editing entirely? No. No, there's not. And no serious person would say that there is. But let's look at the comments, shall we? Because you'll miss things and your friend's grammar isn't as good as you think it is. It doesn't need to cost $6K, but why put in all the work to write the damn thing, only to have your story lost behind a bunch of grammar slips and punctuation errors? My dude, 0 people recommended skipping editing entirely. Now, this commenter, I did correct them, and they came back and said, oh, I didn't phrase it right. I totally agree with you. It's awesome that you don't pay $6,000. In the article, I had 2 different cases. One author who did very well with their launch paid $8,000, way too much, even though they had a successful launch. And the other one was recommended, because she hadn't finished yet, to pay $6,000 for 5 different levels of editing. That's ridiculous. Yes, it is for most people, but we'll get to that in a minute. In pushing back against that pricing model, I had several people just fill up my comments section complaining that I was, propagating trash on the independently published market? Well, for starters, your grammar and spelling probably suck. You're also incapable of telling when one of your favorite bits is going to be tiresome as hell to everyone else. Okay, 2 things, sir. My grammar and spelling do not suck. They're actually very good. But to your second point, even the best writer in the whole world will have those tiresome bits that they think are awesome, but nobody else does. It inclines the reader to skip. Those are a part of writing, hence why you should have an editor and pay them, just not $8,000, like I said. Now, where do these types of comments come from? They come from 2 places. One, very often, and I try not to get mad at my trad pub cohorts, I guess we could say. Look, you guys get 5 layers of editing. And still, when it goes to print, there's always that one pesky typo that gets through. It's fine. Everybody understands that's part of the deal. Um, but independently published authors cannot, and frankly should not, get 5 layers of editing, hence the point of the article. But you have people rushing in to say, yes, yes, you should. The more editing that you get, the better. You need 5, 6, 7 layers of editing. Because if there's even one single error, that means your book sucks. If there's one scene that drags, your book sucks. This is especially bad in the fiction industry. For nonfiction, there is a lot more grace. What they say is, okay, the ideas are important, not so much the format. And there's a lot of pushing of the minimum viable product model on the nonfiction side of things, which I'll be honest, I'm not super crazy about that because I like to read nonfiction. And if your format is bad or you didn't get it edited, it's distracting for me. So, the MVP model is okay, I guess, but really only if you're a good writer to begin. But for fiction, they have the opposite problem. There are so many people in the indie space that will insist, no, you have to have $6, $7, $8,000 editors because those are the good ones. No, just no. So the $1 million question is, what exactly should you be paying? The answer, it depends. It depends on the expertise level of your editor, and it depends on what kind of editing you get. Now, for the purposes of this video, we're only going to be talking about a developmental edit, which, to be very clear, no informational nonfiction product needs. So if you're writing self-help, you don't need a developmental edit. No, you don't, and don't listen to anyone who says that you do. If you're writing fiction, or if you're writing a memoir, you need a developmental edit, generally speaking, unless you have very skilled and trusted beta or alpha readers on your street team. If you have that going for you, you might be able to skip the developmental edit. But if you're new to writing, frankly, you shouldn't. So how much do you pay for it? If you are okay with dealing with a newer editor to the field, it is reasonable to expect that you will be charged a penny or a penny and a half per word. Most editors charge per word because, books vary in length, they vary in complexity, and sometimes they change their rates depending on the genre. So for instance, if you're writing a paranormal shifter romance, it's a lot easier to edit than if you're doing high fantasy, even if the word counts are similar. I don't change it, but some people do. Newer editors will charge lower rates. They do this because they're just getting their business started. It does not mean that they're less good. It could just mean that their day job was editing and they're transitioning into a freelancer. It could just mean that, hey, they're really good at this. They're a prolific reader. They're a prolific writer. They're just getting started in editing. And so when you're first starting out, you charge lower. It doesn't mean they're less good. Personally, I've been doing this for 15 years, so I charge for developmental edit 2 cents per word. And one of my lovely commenters actually told me that I was undercharging. That might be so if you're just talking about my experience and the level of care I'm putting into the manuscript. I accept that maybe I'm undercharging, but let me tell you why I have not right now raised my prices. Because it's not just a matter of what you offer. It's a matter of who you're targeting. So if we're going to relate editing services to car sales, a Mercedes, and I'm going to say this right out loud, a Mercedes is not better than a Honda. No, it's not. I'm not a car person, okay? A car is transportation, but my husband, y'all, he's a car person. He wants to talk about the 0 to 60 speed, which is stupid. Are you racing people at a stoplight, Eric? You're 45. Why are you doing that? Stop it this instant. I digress. The Mercedes is not better than the Honda. The Mercedes has different marketing than the Honda. The Mercedes, more to the point, has a different customer base than the Honda, okay? My customer base is independently published authors. Generally speaking, they are either new or they are mid-list, meaning that if they make a living from their books, it's a modest living. They pull in tops $50K a year from their books. And I'm so happy to work with those mid-list authors. They're great. But the majority of the ones that I work with, even if they're full-time writers, 10, 20K a year, it's tough. It's really tough for fiction writers. So that's my market. If I start pricing myself at 5 cents a word, I am by definition cutting out those beginning writers who, like me, are still working a day job so that they can feed their children while they write. So I'm going to throw up this service provider. I am not giving hate to her. I just want to be very, very clear as I delineate what audience is for what service providers. If you will look at this gal, first off, let's look at how she positions herself. She positions herself, one, she's a top-rated seller, which is not something you can do just by being good at what you do. You're selected for that. And two, look at who her clients are. Okay, so she's been featured in the New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, USA Today. She's worked with HarperCollins. She has worked with LJ Shen, huge author. Okay, so this girl is angling herself towards an upper crust audience. She is specifically angling herself towards people who want to be traditionally published. She is not looking for first-time indie authors at all, and you can tell that by looking at her prices. So for just 5,000 words, that's it. The average novel is between 40 and 60,000 words independently published. Okay, but so for just 5,000 of those, she is charging you $445, which is a lot, okay? Let's look at her premium package. It's $695 for 10,000 words. For 10,000 words at a full developmental edit, for me, that's going to be what? That's only going to be $200 for me for a full developmental edit. And she's not even really giving that to you. Hers is mostly a feedback. She's not doing line edits to your work. She's not making corrections for grammar, syntax, phrasing, etc. She is ripping your manuscript apart. It's basically like an advanced beta read. And she's saying, okay, this is slow. This isn't good. This is going to make an agent close the manuscript. Okay, hers is very specific. So I'm sure if you want to be published by HarperCollins, this might be worth every penny, to be frank. I've never worked with this person, but her audience is different than mine. So she's not a bad person because she's charging this high price of money. It's just that she's working with a different audience level, and those prices are in line with that particular audience's expectation. Independently published authors have to kind of decide what kind of editing they need. This depends on your experience level, how much you've written, if you've published before, and frankly, your genre. So yes, editing is important, but you shouldn't be paying $6,000 for it, particularly if this is your first book, particularly if you're independently published. Regardless of what your financial situation is, and even if you have the money to throw around and get these, HarperCollins editors, good for you if you do. But even still, before you work with any editor, always, always, always get a free editing sample. And any editor that tells you no, don't work with them. Because even if their skill level is tippy top, it doesn't mean that they're the right one for you. So regardless of what your budget is, always get that free sample. That will also help you reveal those diamonds in the rough. So that new person who's only charging you a penny a word, get that free sample. You might be quite pleasantly surprised at how skilled they are. So long story short, yes to developmental editing, no to overpaying for your budget and your experience level. Before you go, I would love it if you would give me a like, subscribe, and a share, especially if you're an independently published author or you intend to be sometime in the future. Follow this space so you can learn how to tell and sell your story. So that's all for me this week, and until next time, take care and write well.